So you guys have known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
I understand, Chris, that you gave Jake his start in college coaching.
I did, and I usually remind him about that
Weekly.
Yeah, a couple times a week. So yeah, I saved his life.
What did you see in him?
Yeah, it's funny. We
Couldn't work for anything, basically.
yeah,
He didn't pay me to come.
I didn't pay him a lot, right? It was kind of like a volunteer position.
Yeah.
It was. We had a mutual friend, Josh Gregory, who was just coaching college, a friend of mine, and it called me about Jake, and shoot, I think I said no the first time, and it went back around, but his name got circling back around, through other folks, and yeah, after we got on the phone a little bit and had a chance to get to know each other, it was perfect.
Oh, great experience.
How was he to work for?
He's tough.
All right, next question.
It's funny you say that, because so every time Chris calls me or we talk, like he's like the nicest person. Hey, I hate to bother you or whatever. Like if you say he's tough, that's one of the things that intrigues me, is because if he's tough for you, I'm guessing he's tough on the players as well. Like, talk about that dynamic. What is he like with his players? What is he like as a
You want me answer?
Absolutely.
Yeah. As a boss or like as his players? So like, it was perfect first job for me, because he literally was like, hey, go do this. And I had zero experience. So I had no idea what to do. So I had to go proactively find out how to do things. And it's incredibly stressful when there's a deadline and stuff, and you make a mistake or it's not how he wants it. He'll tell you. But it also was like, I learned, I tell this to everybody, that year I learned more in that year than I did any other time as an assistant, just because it was like a crash course in all the other stuff that isn't even, you don't even think is important, like paperwork and all the little things and camps and stuff like that.
And my viewpoint on that, and I think he does a really good job of the same thing, is, the beauty of bringing in a new assistant is maybe I learned something, new way how to do it. If I just sat there and there are certain things, I guess you have to walk an assistant through, and somebody that's new to the business. But especially at that time, I was still young to the business as well. And, I'd worked for Trey Jones at FSU. So I knew one way of doing it. So he taught me a lot, right? And Brendan Webb was my assistant. I mean, every assistant I've had has done such a good job of showing me a new way to do it. And, if they screwed it up, then we'll figure it out, but that's fine. I already know one way to do it, and he taught me, new ways to do certain things.
He gave me a lot of trust especially in recruiting internationally and stuff like that. And I recruited a lot back before we had any limitations and stuff. And, I remember one thing, my first ever time I went recruiting, we were recruiting Louis Gagne, actually went to LSU. And I'm like, Malloy, I've seen this kid on the range, he's flushing it. And he's like, I guarantee you he's going to shoot in the 80s. And I went, no way, he's pure. He shot in the 80s. And I was like, since then I never went back to the range, because I was like, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter what it looks like, how pretty it is and all that. So I remember that was my first ever time I went recruiting. I learned that straight away, and I still remember it now. And I still like do that when I'm recruiting somebody. I don't even go to the range ever when I'm on a tournament. But like, you go back to his players, like he was really tough on his players. So like, I was a bit more of I was a bit more of a big brother type guy. So I was like, hey guys, he don't really hate me,
But Chris, Trey Jones gave you quite a lot of responsibility, gave you opportunity to grow at Florida State. I mean, walking coach at the national finals, had some amazing experiences there. The fact that the head coach gave you that responsibility, has that fed into the way that you've worked with your assistants since?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there were a couple of guys that were my mentors coming through. Trey Jones certainly was number one. And he did a lot of those same things. I'd ask him, okay, how do I do this? Like, I don't want to go figure it out. Right. And I did. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way and learn from it, but learn more from those and during that time than I would if there was just some set way to do every single thing. JT Higgins, he was at Texas A&M, was a big believer in that as well. He let his guys, he knew how he wanted things done, but He gave his guys, a lot of leeway. And the one that always surprised people, I think Buddy Alexander. Buddy was really big on that. And I think, people look at Buddy as being old school and just set in one way. He really wasn't. So I used to always pick those guys' brains and watch how they handled their assistant coaches and did things. And I think that's the best way to do it for development. I mean, like I don't have an assistant coach to be an assistant coach for life, right? He wasn't my assistant coach. He was getting paid. What did I hire you for?
Like 30 grand.
Yeah, which was way more than Brendan Webb was like 20. I mean, like it was, we didn't have any money when, at USF at the time. When I took that job, it was like Justin Fetcho was my first assistant coach, and he was there. So I inherited Justin. Love Justin, does a great job. That was really like a volunteer position. I think he was getting paid $8,000 or something at the time. So, even though we were getting that salary up, they're not there to be an assistant coach. So they got to maximize what they learned at that time. You got to tell them the Chase Koepka glove story.
Oh, yeah. First, I'll tell you, though, he did tell me, though, he's like, if you haven't got a job offer in 3 years, I'll fire you. And because he's like, you're not doing a good enough job. And I'd say that to the guys I've hired too. Like, hey, you got to be so good, people want to hire you. Like, that's what I want from my assistant. But this pretty much sums up the point, okay? So he's like, postseason's coming up. He's like, Jake, we're running out of gloves. Order some gloves. We went on a Titleist deal or whatever. And so I get the form and I found it and I'm looking at it. I'm like, they've stopped making all of our guys wore Titleist players glove. I was like, man, they've stopped hearing it. It's like, all they're doing is these FootJoy gloves. And I didn't realize it was a FootJoy and a Titleist deal. And so I'm like, well, this glove looks pretty sweet. It was like $30 per, I don't even remember what it's called. It's like a tall glove. And I ordered a bunch of them. And he's like, Jake, you spent $4,000 on gloves.
And these are not even the right.
Not even the right.
This is not what we wear.
You got to send them back. So I'm freaking out. I'm recruiting, call them up. Hey, it's a $5 restocking fee per glove. So I'm like, Malloy, we can't send them. He ripped me. Okay. God, I'm not going to cuss. It was a nervous time in my life. Okay. Well, we're at practice a week later and Chase is like, hey, coach, can I get a glove? So I'll go in the storage room, pick one of these gloves up and hand it to him. He's like, shit, where did you get these gloves? Like, these are tour only gloves. Like only tour players get these. And Malloy goes, only the best for you guys.
But beyond getting the glove order wrong but right, you talk about making mistakes in your career and learning from those mistakes. Are there times that you look back on, either as in your career as an assistant or as a head coach, which you really think these are sort of turning point moments where you've made a mistake and grown from that? And if so, what are they?
Ooh.
I mean, the easy one to point to is recruiting.
Yeah.
Like, that's the biggest one that has the biggest effect on your life. Like, administrative mistakes, they're just, they happen. You might spend too much money here or whatever and, go to a recruiting trip that you shouldn't have gone on. But the biggest mistake's recruiting. Like, and it's really hard to kind of talk about it because you never know when the recruiting process is all fairy tale stuff. It's like, coach is being nice. He's super nice on the phone. And then you go to the first practice and yells at you. Like, you don't know a guy till you know him. And then you end up spending so much time. And I think, not just the biggest mistakes I made were probably during COVID, when you couldn't actually go properly recruit a guy and you might sign a couple guys without the research you need. And that's the biggest thing. It's always a nice little reality, like a little check on doing the right things and checking the kid and his character and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. I mean, right, recruiting the lifeblood of our program, so it's the easy one to point to. All the other stuff in our jobs is, in my opinion, I mean, got to work hard, but it's fairly straightforward, like overall. But the recruiting, there's so many guys that I can look back and I probably worked the hardest on and technically did the best job of recruiting that player and didn't get them. And then you have something else, fall in your lap, then that player ends up being better than the one you worked hard for. So I think not stressing out too much, over that is a really big deal. Yeah.
Jake, you talk about your recruiting philosophy, you like to recruit athletic people with a freak factor, which makes them stand apart.
Oh, you did
Right.
research.
I've done some research.
You should see the notes. It's extensive.
And Chris, you say you like people who really enjoy the grind.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that every coach has a very different approach to recruiting, or is it just shades of the same color?
I think we all have crossover in it. I mean, and we can say whatever we want. At the end of the day, we're looking for the lowest scores. We're looking for the guys that can get it done. I think if you look at his team and you look at my team, yes, one's more international than the other. But if you look at the players themselves, I mean, it'd be pretty simple.
Very simple.
Yeah, I mean, like it's not one team is overall bombers. I mean, it's kind of a good mix that's in there. I think the biggest thing is looking for a fit. We try to make it really hard around our place at home whenever we can. And I know he does the same too, that way they can work out mistakes at home, right? And we can, when you get on the road, it should seem a little bit easier. So for me, that's a really important piece, is figuring out somebody that wants to be coached, that can handle if he's not doing the right things, getting on them. And, that's a big philosophy for me.
Yeah, my thing is the freak factors is something that goes back to Josh Gregory and Augusta days. Like if you're not on the team, you be good at something, have good grades, and finding something that sets you apart on that team is really important. So like if you bomb it, or if you've got an exceptional short game or something, like that's your freak factor. So I try and find in recruiting something that stands out from everybody. Sometimes doing everything really nice and tidy stands out to me too. It's not just one part of it, but doing something that other people don't do, that gets my attention. And then for me, it's a little bit like him saying, find the right fit. Like culturally, the guys that have never done well for me as a coach is the guys who aren't on the same page, like who have the same goals and aspirations that I do. And it's not as important to them as it is to me. And I want to be able to, scale guys back on work ethic and stuff like that. And I think that's the biggest thing, in recruiting is, making those mistakes is, okay, why are you coming to LSU? Are you coming to come to football games, or are you coming to make it on tour? Like what's the end game for you? And really hammering that. I had a conversation with a recruit today on that exact question. Why do you want to come to LSU? Like, I get it. I'm recruiting you, but like, what do you want out of it? And listening to their answer and making sure it aligns with what I want. Because if they don't, I'm going to just be all over it. Like, I'm not going to be a nice guy to play for if they're not doing what I want to do. And they're not going to enjoy me coaching them if they're partying or, doing the wrong things either. So that's, to me, recruiting wise is the biggest thing.
And you have to identify that, right? And, and you have to ask really tough questions. People think about recruiting visits as just sunshine and roses, which it is. Recruiting visits are cool. You're there because, you're good at golf and somebody wants you, but you have to ask really tough questions in that process. And I'd be really scared if I were a recruit, if I went to a school and that coach for a recruiting visit, and that coach didn't ask me any tough questions. The tough questions are coming. So we don't get that all out on the table. And to Jake's point, we're at schools that have big time football and big time athletic programs. If you're coming to Ole Miss or LSU because it's a great social scene, or because, the football games are fun, or basketball or baseball, whatever, that doesn't add up, and that's not going to work at the end of the day. So I think that's a major part of recruiting.
You both mentioned culture fit, right? Like they're all good, right? A lot of them shoot low scores, but you have to find the right fit for your program, for the guys you may already have. Do you feel like it is specific to you all as people, meaning literally you, Chris, and you, Jake, like what you're looking for has a lot to do with your own values, your own goals, and who you are as people from a work ethic standpoint? Just that whole culture fit. Is it a reflection of who you are?
Yeah. I mean, think about it. During the season, we spend more time with our team than we do our families. So if that doesn't align, it doesn't mean they have to be clones. Look at his team, look at my team. Everywhere, there's so many different personalities, which is fun. That's a big thing that we both believe in, I think. But if they don't have the same core values and goals, then like it's not going to work.
Yeah, me and him are very similar. Like, he's one of my best friends, so we hang out all the time. So our teams get on pretty good, but like that annoys me too. It's like they like each other,
Right?
Because they're not supposed to. Now, when they play, when they play, they're like, they're in the zone. They want to beat them. It's nothing like that. But when you're talking about like me and him, it's a lot of the real core stuff's going to be the same. It's about like what the kid wants from his coach, all the little things outside of what we want, basically. Like, how do we practice? How do we qualify? How do we treat our guys? All that stuff outside, and how do you prepare and stuff? Because he prepares his team probably different than mine, and has different ideas with that. And so like that's what a kid should be. If he's narrowing it down to like Ole Miss or LSU or wherever, a really good team is trying to win a national championship, he's trying to figure out now, okay, is the coach's personality match up with mine? Because all of our goals are probably the same. And if that kid's goals are the same, he's just got to figure out which one he likes better.
How much is the fit? Again, I've read quotes from you, Jake, where you don't really mind too much if there are rough edges within the team and people have that sort of friction because it brings out that competitive edge.
Yeah.
Chris, you talk about fit. How much of that is about fitting with your teammates as much as fitting with you and your ethos and philosophy and beliefs as a coach?
Well, I think it goes back to what we said, like that's the common core beliefs have got to be aligned, and the goals have to be aligned. How they go about that, like talk about, like with coaches are different and players are different. That's okay. I mean, like for them to challenge each other, you look at my team, and I'm Michael Lasasso to a Cam Tankersley. They're both really good at golf. They are complete opposite in how they go about their business and what their personalities are. I think that's good. I think that's kind of what Jake has alluded to before. You don't want it comfortable at home all the time. You want somebody that's kind of riding your butt, and you want them not wanting to lose to each other, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, and friction's good. Like, being uncomfortable creates growth, and making them uncomfortable and them being uncomfortable around teammates is not always a bad thing. Like, if especially if there's a real competitive rivalry in that team, be shocked how much it can improve people. It doesn't all have to be sunshine and roses to get better. Like, you can find it in chaos and all this. There can be a lot of opportunity. We're recruiting alphas, basically, and especially now we're going to 8. It's going to be real 8 alphas. And all these guys are the best player in their state, or the best player in their country, or the best player in Europe, or the best player in America. And you put them all together, and they're not just going to accept somebody else being better.
I think it upset any of them, the coaches that I know. It really upset me if one of my players was fine losing to one of his teammates and just walked away and go, "It's great." I would hope that would piss him off enough and light that fire and get a little bit of an edge, and him walk away from it, mad. At the end of the day, we all on the same team. They got to figure out we got to coexist. But no, I think there's a healthy part of rivalry, and that leads to growth.
We love it when people call people out on my team. I talk about it all the time. If you see somebody doing something wrong, call them out. Like, I'll never be mad at you, even if it creates an argument. Just call them out. And now we have freshmen who call them out, people out for anything. They're like, no, don't. But
Exactly.
yeah,
But it's just never.
keep it up. But so that it's good. I love it.
It's accountability.
So obviously we did play golf this fall, as you probably both know, and we are here with the number 1 team in the country and the number 7 team in the country. I'm going to start with Jake. We won at Visit Knoxville.
Yep.
We won at Blessings.
Yep.
I'm not sure if you realized this, but both of your wins, I was there.
I did.
So
Traveling with us.
yeah, I'm just saying, for Spain, if it's something you're interested in, I can.
You're going to need to get that size.
Yeah. I know. Well,
You look good in purple. Listen, I look good in just about anything. No, but tell us a little bit about, obviously transition from East Tennessee State to LSU. I believe you brought 2 players with you.
Yep, 2 players.
Right? But it's, number 17 in the country, first year at LSU, our 4 school, I think is what we call it at this point. What's that been like? How has the fall season been? What's the difference?
It was just chaotic. honestly, like moving my family and, all the other stuff that you forget about, and schedule and getting a roster and, everything just set up, even ordering clothes. We didn't have any clothes ordered, hiring 2 assistant coaches, and just dealing with all that paperwork. And I had a great support system around me at LSU. It's a big school. They've done this. They're like pretty much primed to win. And, the support they gave me in the transition was amazing. I think that kind of showed how good the LSU looked after me and the team and how we came out, winning straight away and, being more comfortable. But, the guys I brought with me, they had a, chaotic time too, transferring all their grades and, moving all their stuff over and it being unexpected. So that's the big thing, is all the other stuff you don't realize. We were really comfortable at East Tennessee State. We had it kind of rolling and, to kind of step up and me move and my players move. It was a big ask for them. And, they've handled it incredibly, Maddie and Alka both. So it's been an amazing transition, honestly. Like I pinch myself a little bit, in my office and look at what we have. And, right now I'm a new coach, so they haven't said no to me on anything. I'm just sending it, but I'm just, our team that we've got and the people that bought in, it's cool to win. We were last group and we beat them, and they beat us a couple of times now too. But, just being around my friends, them supporting me, them being happy for me. That's been the big thing. You kind of find out who your friends are in the transition.
Do you think, or let me phrase it this way, you win your first tournament, new team, couple new players. Like,
yeah.
Did it tell you anything about your team? Was that the expectation, or was it kind of like, oh wow, we are really good? Or did you know that coming in?
We were underrated. I think people weren't really talking about us, and rightly so. No one really knew or, how everyone was going to fit in. I basically moneyballed it a little bit, in terms of like the roster that I built. But, we knew Algert was amazing. He came out and played great. Maddie's really solid, great player. Hopefully Walker Cup. So, like, on paper, we look great. Jay Mendel's a really good player, stuck around. And we brought in Alphonse Bonderson. So, I knew all of our kind of core. And then, I didn't really know how good Arnie Svensson was going to be. He's ridiculous, by the way. And he's had an incredible fall. So, like, I didn't really know how good we were going to be, and kind of saw a little bit at home. And then when they went and they had the right attitudes and they came out and they were just so unbothered by the situation, I realized I got some dudes. And, the best thing that happened to us actually was we went and sucked at the Valero the week after. And that was the biggest blessing of our fall, honestly, because, they were on this big high and they thought they were doing everything right. I'm like, boys, and we can't do this. We're winning a national championship. You can't have offense like that. So it was good and bad.
Talking of learning from sort of adversity, obviously at the regionals last year, Chris, you had the sort of agony of finishing one shot short. How much of an incentive and motivation has that been for your guys this year?
Oh, I think it's a huge part of it. Certainly we had Lasasso get sick. At SEC's never really recovered, didn't recover throughout the whole summer. I mean, it took him a while. He lost, almost 18 pounds. I mean, so just a weird deal. But I knew, to your point, that, we had 4 of our, 5 guys coming back, not just for 1 year, but for 2 more years. Although it hurt in the moment, I knew it was an opportunity that we could use to our advantage. And if we used it the right way, if we acted like it didn't happen, then we're going to put ourselves in jeopardy of doing that same thing. So even with that, you don't know, right? And that was something we didn't shy away from. That was my first team meeting before we went out and qualified for the first time this fall. It's the first thing that I brought up. We weren't going to put our head in the sand and act like it didn't happen. We were going to hit it head on. And I'd heard them talk about what they were going to do. And, I think it's, refreshing for those guys to go, oh God, all right, now we actually get to do something about it, because they couldn't do anything about it in the summer. All summer long, they, stewed over it. They weren't able to do anything until we got to the fall, and they've responded. They're better for it.
I'm always interested. Just 11 years, I believe, now at Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of built it to what it is now, at least in this stretch, to be the number 1 team in the country, We've had Brain Thornberry. We've had close personal friend Jackson Suber. Some really good individuals. What's it been like to build this over this time to kind of, again, we haven't won a national championship this year or anything, so I'm not trying to put cart in front of horse, but this is a really good team. What's it been like to kind of build maybe to this percent?
Yeah, and you're right. They're not giving out any mid-season awards, for us, so it doesn't mean anything. All it does is validate the work that they have done and what we can be. We didn't want, he's been with me through this whole process and one of my best friends in the world. It was important for me that this is my forever job. Like I didn't want to have this job to get another one. So everything from facilities to culture to, personnel, I didn't want like a quick fix. Right. And I wanted to do it the right way. I wanted to balance out the recruiting classes as much as possible, get the right guys in there. And we had success right out of the gates. I think, our first year, we went to regionals, took a team that hadn't come close to getting to regionals for a few years and missed it the second year, but we've at least made the NCAA tournament every year, since I've been there, with the exception of, like I said, the second year. And it's been just a natural progression, at the end of the day. And again, it was not a quick build, but I knew that we had a little bit of time as well. And now we're just starting, when I took the job, it was, always, and he's heard me, vent about this, that the other blue blood, programs around the country, when we would get in the mix for recruiting somebody, they would always just kill us and go, why would you go to Ole Miss if you want to play on the PGA Tour? You can't do that. They don't have any tour guys. They don't have that. We don't just snap your fingers and have tour guys. You have to recruit the Braden Thornberrys. You have to recruit the Jackson Tubers, then have them play and then have them develop. And we're just now getting there. So I don't think, with us now getting to be number one team in the country and really hitting our stride, we were top 5, most all the year last year. It just coincides with 2 of our guys, getting their, PGA Tour cards. Like I said, there's no coincidence.
Jake, when you've played on that sort of underdog aspect, particularly at East Tennessee State, how difficult is it to maintain that underdog edge and motivation when you're at a big school like LSU and you've got a team that's ranked very solidly in the top 10 in the country and you've got 2 wins under your belt straight out of the gate? How easy or difficult is it to maintain that sort of slight outsider edge, if you like?
Well, it's a good question because I've actually talked to Albert about that. It's something that you play on at East Tennessee State, for sure. Like, hey, no one's thinking about us. No, you make them feel it's us against them. And, I think we did that in the first couple of weeks. Hey, no one's talking about us. We were the underdogs. LSU hadn't done great the last 4 or 5 years. So I just was playing on it still. But, in our last team meeting, I said, guys, we can't do that anymore. You got to expect, this is the expectation that, like, we are good enough. You've got to start getting used to it. You need to walk out the van and understand that everyone's going to be looking at you because you're probably going to be the best team there. You're going to be the best players there. And you need to embrace it and enjoy it. And, because if you're going to play on the tour, that's kind of the mentality you need anyway. So now it has flipped. It's a really good question because it was something that I had to flip too. Like, okay, how do I motivate guys and create that edge? And then you just realize that their talent is their edge. They've just got to understand that in a calmness. And, the big word that we've been using is poise. Like, if you have poise and calmness and focus, like with how talented we are, like we are the best team there, we should win. And I think that's kind of what we've changed from underdog to just expectation and poise. So,
yeah, and we battled that as well. As I mentioned, like, building our program, it was the same thing. No one thought about Ole Miss, for the longest time. And last year was kind of the first year where everyone's kind of like, oh gosh. And maybe we overachieved a little bit last year, throughout the year. But this year it's the same message. Like I tell my guys, I'm like, here's the good news. You don't have to pretend to be somebody you're not. You are great. Like, nobody gave you a number 1 ranking, a top 5 ranking or any of that. Like no one voted on that. Like, that's, prove it. Yeah, exactly. So that's the good news. You don't have to go out. And I've had plenty of teams and he's had plenty of teams that we had to capitalize. We had to have everything go our way for Stanford or somebody. I mean, just, a blue blood program, to be able to beat those teams. Now, it's kind of the cool part, right? That's the biggest challenge. His team, my team is going, okay, Poise, whatever. You don't have to be somebody else. Being you is good enough.
Yeah, exactly.
I read a quote from you, Chris, where you said, I'm competitive to a fault. I don't think there's any denying that you're a very competitive person, Jake. Where does that competitiveness come from?
I just think, having an older brother growing up, right, at the end of the day, just the way that we were raised and being an athlete and competing and whatever. I played every sport that I could, growing up. So I just always, I guess, from my parents, my environment growing up, and I'm sure the same with them. But yeah, we're terrible losers. Like, it's not good. We're good to Golly GL after they whipped our ass in Tennessee. That burned me to the core at the end of the day. Now, losing to one of my best friends is fine, right? I mean, it's better than somebody else. But yeah, that stung. Now we can pick up the phone and talk the next day and get through it. And certainly I'm happy for, he's a stud. He's done an unbelievable job everywhere he's been, and will continue to do that. But God, I mean, he doesn't want to lose to me. We don't want to lose to each other. I love him.
I mean, I'm 5'6", unathletic, asthmatic. I feel like I beat the odds. I'm not supposed to be here. And I think that's competitiveness, short man syndrome, very similar vibes. And
there wasn't an older brother with you.
There wasn't an older brother, and it was just, I think it was just everywhere I went, every milestone I had, I was like, I'm not supposed to be. I was not supposed to be on the PGA Tour. I'm like, well, what else am I going to do? I love golf. I love competing. I can't just sit behind a desk and, like I said, our whole practice and our whole lives are competing. I'll get bored in a practice round and I'll be like, give me your putter. I mean, I need to do something. We'll compete. And, we compete for push-ups anywhere we want them. And you don't want to lose push-ups to me when I can tell you where to do it. It never ends well for a player.
Chase Koepka still loses.
Yeah, for sure he does. My favorite was...
So, Chase, if you are listening wherever right now, drop and give 5 for me.
Yeah. Oh, man. You mentioned Chase, obviously from your time at South Florida, but then there's also Brooks, Florida State, right? Elite players, right? What is that experience like, having elite players in your program? Because, I mean, you guys have elite players now too, but obviously experienced previously. How is that dynamic coaching? Is there anything you do differently when you have that caliber player on your team?
Yeah. Those two players were so, I mean, and he knows them well. I mean, they're so different at the end of the day. I mean, Brooks was this athletic. You knew what he could be. And he did the things to be a superstar. Chase was athletically the complete opposite, right? And didn't hit it very far. And there are a lot of questions, but figured out a way, right? He's so competitive that, he's had a really good career. And you coach every player a little bit differently based on personalities, for sure. But again, I just think it comes down to the individual player and trying to figure out what buttons you need to push. I mean, you can't coach them all the same. But hey, those kind of players make me look like a decent coach, right? We are looking for those kinds of players.
If you talk about Poise, I mean, the Brooks Koepka we know now on the course is a sort of big beast, isn't he? He's got a presence and an aura, and he's been hugely successful. At Florida State, he was a different animal, wasn't he?
Oh yeah,
Since that he went through a big learning process and transformation to become the player he is now, and to have that poise. Can you talk a little bit about the Brooks you knew then and the Brooks you know now?
Yeah, they're two totally different, people for sure. And he's worked really hard. People look at, he's heard me say this a million times, you look at Brooks now and they go, he just doesn't let anything get to him. He doesn't show a whole lot of emotion, goes through it. They're like, man, that's a cool trait to have and all that. That's a learned behavior. Brooks Koepka naturally is a hothead. He's competitive, baseball player, and just that's who he naturally is. So he's worked really, really hard, and he had to identify, and certainly, Trey Jones and myself, we challenged him, and people around him challenged him to get better, but he could only do that, right? And that was, he got all the physical tools. That part was easy. But for him to really take ownership of that, and the attitude, and maintaining, having, back to his poise, in the moment, that's all a learned behavior, which I think is the coolest part. And as we try to be a part of developing players and making them have a chance to be on the PGA Tour, just a man in life, watching them actually make those changes is probably the coolest part of our job.
How much would it mean to you guys to be up against each other in a championship match, probably La Costa in May before?
We'd sign up for that now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I would love that. I think about that all the time. Like, I don't care who I'm playing. If I've got that opportunity, that's what I want, in the match play. And I think the cool thing would be, I could probably see us, sitting having a beer and be like, who are you going to put out at one? And just talking about I think that's how the vibe would be. Let's try and get the coolest matches we can, and who you going to walk with, kind of thing. But
we don't hit a shot. I mean, at the end of the day, and yes, we think he does an amazing job with his players out there. I think we do as well. It's going to come down to their performance and staying in there. I don't know, like at Tennessee, we talk. I mean, it's probably not like we're sitting here right now and going
like
through. We don't have like up in the things that we say to each other, but it's all friendly. If I can't win the national championship, then I would love to be there and watch him do it and be the first to give him a hug.
Yeah, looking forward to spring season again. You guys are both top 10 teams, number 1 team, number 7 team, right? Like, is there another gear that you feel like you need to get to be at that place where you're playing for a national championship, or at least kind of,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think certainly we had a good fall. I like the consistency, from our guys. Second for, first. I mean, but we got to get better. Every team that's gonna do anything worthwhile at the end of the season, when it actually means something, they're gonna be a better version of themselves come April and May than they are right now. So for us to be on top and competitive in that environment, we both better get better, for sure.
I think one thing they did really well is they had guys step up from all different guys step up. And I think that's probably the little bit difference from what we had. His guys, who was it play good for and for you? Meeks?
Meeks, yeah.
So they had different people pop up, and we lent heavily on a couple people, and we got the talent for other guys to step up. I think that's probably us. 3, 4, 5 guys are really good. Like, they could win comfortably, but they need to start doing that. It doesn't matter what position they're in, if they're a 5 guy or whatever. We need somebody to step up and align with their performance, with their talent. And that's probably, for us, just getting tougher in those back spots, and giving our guys a bit more freedom at the top, to go after it.
It's everything. Yeah. I mean, I think Arnie is and you alluded to it earlier, Arnie starting, it's been cool for me to watch him start to get some confidence as a freshman going through, and, but by your final tournament, the fall, he didn't look like a freshman.
Yeah. But he's a freshman, so he shouldn't have this kind of pressure and expectation. I think, letting him grow and develop and having a bad day, and a teammate stepping up. I think that's probably my biggest goal, is to get really tough in every single position and get really elite in every single position. Because if you're trying to win an SEC and a national championship, you can't have stragglers. Like, you just can't have somebody have a bad day.
It's true.
Even if it's somebody gets sick, like that happened to them, like, you've got to have 4 other guys that can handle it on their own. And, that's probably, the fall is a great indicator of, who your best 6, 7 guys are. And then the spring is like, okay, really narrowing it down, being competitive and seeing who you can trust when it comes down to it, the final. That might not always be the best, most talented player, but somebody who can handle those situations and stuff is what I try and identify.
You've had guys go away and play as individuals this year in other tournaments, and win medalist honors as well.
Yeah,
So that's presumably part of that process of giving yourself a bigger pool for that 6 or 5.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I like, I shouldn't even bring this up, but like I think I was a really good six man on the Augusta State team. Josh Gregory has told me a bunch of times, like, and it's a really nice feeling for me. I wasn't on the team, you know, when we won, but I feel like I pushed them and contributed, and it's a really underrated part. Now I'm in coaching. It's a really underrated part. You talk about being comfortable and uncomfortable. There is nothing better than your 5 guy being uncomfortable. I promise you. Like if he knows if he's not performing, or your 4 guy, he's out. And I think all the great teams, you know, guy I really look up to and respect is Oklahoma, you know, because Hibble, like what they did in Hawaii this year was ridiculous. You know, they had 2 individuals finish, you know, 1-2, and then they won the team too. Like, you know, those guys who played in the team and won, you'd be sweating it a bit, you know, if you had the Indies winning. That's a big thing for me, is winning. Like that's the only way I exempt players. Is the only way you guarantee playing the next event is you can win it. And you know, I don't care if you finish 2nd or 8th. I mean, it's a good chance you probably go it. I like it. But the only way to guarantee it is win it. So,
well, congratulations on a great fall season for both of you, and best of luck for the spring.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll see you in the championship match at La Costa.
yeah,
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
Again, appreciate both of you guys' time, Jake, Chris. Again, anytime your name pops up on my phone, I'm picking up the phone. So I appreciate you guys taking the time.
We try not to be too needy.
No, you're good, man. Yeah. Never that.
We try not to complain too much.
Yeah, I never.
Hey, but I got something for you. Thanks, guys.
Cheers,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks very much.